Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the closing session of the first day of Politico Competitive Europe Summit. As you know, the month of June has been a very intense month in terms of summit. We had US President Biden here in Brussels, and we also had another very important summit with Canada, and we're here to discuss the trade relations between the European Union and Canada today with Minister Mary Ng, who is the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade of Canada. Welcome, Minister Ng. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Hello, Giorgio. It's really terrific to be here with you.
Thank you very much. So if you're okay with it, we'll just start with what happened 2 weeks ago here in Brussels. We had this very important meeting between the Canadian government and the European Union, this summit a couple of weeks ago, which touched upon all the big topics of EU and Canada trade relations. So one of that, of course, is the CETA. Other important discussions are around the supply of raw materials. I would like to ask you, what is, according to you, the biggest achievement of the summit we had a couple of weeks ago?
Well, thank you so much, Giorgio. And I think the biggest achievement is really this commitment between Canada and the European Union, and our commitment as trading partners, as friends and allies, to really commit to collaborating, particularly right now when all of our countries are very focused on economic recovery and how we can help our businesses trade and come out of this recovery so that we're creating jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. The other thing as well is that in the strategic partnerships that between Canada and EU, in one of the most important features to both Canada and the European Union, and that is in the fight against climate change. So the strategic partnership on raw material or critical minerals is really important to that, because Canada is a jurisdiction that has, for example, 14 of the 19 ingredients that are needed for a solar panel or for batteries that go into an electric vehicle. So our commitment to work together, our commitment to work through CETA, our important trade agreement between between the EU and Canada. So just this commitment to continue this work, to build this relationship and on that road to recovery and to fight climate change.
Thank you very much, Minister. It looks like there is a lot on the plate of negotiations between the EU and Canada, and that's why maybe our audience would be interested to interact with us today. So, of course, you can submit questions to us. I forgot to mention it at the beginning, so please feel free to join the discussion. You can submit them by swap card, and I will have access to your questions and ask some of them. And, of course, don't hesitate to tweet. You have an hashtag, which is Politico Competition. So now that we have set the stage, Minister, we can maybe move to two of the big topics you mentioned. The first one is CETA. So as our audience know, this trade agreement has been sealed a lot of time ago, but there are still some problems in the ratification process in national parliaments within the European Union. We still have 12 national parliaments which have not ratified yet the EU-Canada agreement. So I would like to ask you, Minister, what would you tell them? What would you tell to those lawmakers to convince them to vote and to vote, of course, positively this deal? And why do you think there is so much reticence in the public opinion of some EU member countries?
Well, that's a really important question. And of course, CETA is the very important trade agreement between Canada and the European Union. But let me just share some of the progress that has been made in this trade relationship precisely because of CETA. In the numbers, since 2020 and since 2016, when CETA came into force, the Canada-EU bilateral trade has increased by 15%. What is also important to this is I often brag, so to speak, about how good this agreement is when it comes to businesses and people. So not only is the bilateral trade numbers increased, you're also seeing companies and entrepreneurs, the number of exporters from Canada to the European Union, but also exporters from European Union to Canada that have increased, over 6% from EU to Canada, almost 7% from Canada to the EU. That's people. Those are entrepreneurs. Those are businesses. A lot of them are small and medium-sized businesses. When I say I brag about the agreement, I tout the inclusive growth opportunities. So what is a trade agreement and the value of it? It's to be able to enable our businesses to prosper on both sides of the Atlantic. So when you have more businesses growing in each of our markets and doing so, that encourages more entrepreneurs that are perhaps women entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized businesses, youth or racialized or Indigenous entrepreneurs in the case of Canada, it's very encouraging. During COVID-19, we didn't let the pandemic stop us from this trading relationship with CETA. We arranged virtual trade missions, the most recent to France. I saw over 300 companies participate in this virtual trade mission, particularly in the area of green growth. So it's very encouraging. So I would say to, I would say to those who are working their way through their own respective parliaments on CETA, this agreement is really about growth, and it's about providing the framework that helps our people and our small and medium-sized businesses in particular grow into each of our markets. It's to facilitate that, have rules around that with high standards for labor, for the environment. And at the end of the day, trade agreements must yield benefits to all of our people, and they must be inclusive, which is what this agreement is. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud of the progress and the numbers that we are seeing. It's very, very encouraging for the relationship.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the pandemic indeed, and I was wondering, do you think that there are a lot of discussions, as you know, around the concept of strategic autonomy, especially here in Brussels, and some principles of free trade are now put into discussion. There is less and less sometimes willingness to engage in trade exchange. Do you think that the COVID pandemic will probably increase the chances of CETA being ratified here in the European Union, or on the contrary, you fear that there is some kind of reinforced protectionism after the crisis, and so it will be even harder? How do you see the coming months?
Yeah, I think that COVID-19 has given us all some lessons. We have certainly seen the fragility of supply chains around the world. We have seen that at the beginning of the pandemic and throughout, that export restrictions have gone up, and that there have been protectionist type measures. But I also think that that there's the other side of it, which is that partners are able to look at their supply and their value chain, and they are looking for resiliency. They are looking for partnership. I think about the work that Canada and the European Union have done precisely during the pandemic. Canada is the leader in hosting the Ottawa Group, and here is where we work together with our partners on matters around the World Trade Organization and some of the reforms that are needed there. And it was really encouraging because we worked with the European Union and other WTO members on an initiative called Trade and Health. And what is Trade and Health? It's where health and trade intersect. So like restrictions at borders, like resiliency of supply chains, like ensuring that critical medical and food makes its way across borders without interruptions. So Canada and the European Union actually led on the Trade and Health Initiative, adopted by Ottawa Group members and now by 51 members of the World Trade Organization members. And we want to keep encouraging consensus on this agreement. So this is really about how we prepare for not only this pandemic, but for future pandemics. So I think that there are lessons to be learned. And I think that we are going to look for more collaboration. And I think that that's what the Canada-EU Summit is also about. It's how do these trading agreements work for us to create the conditions and the rules that really will give confidence to our businesses and to investors? And how do we ensure that we are also working together to make sure that those who are underrepresented in our economies really do get the support and the assistance so that they can, in fact, grow. And in economic recovery, I think it's more important than ever.
Thank you. And you mentioned a topical issue, which is the one of supply chains and the fragility of supply chains, which we really, it was really evident during the coronavirus crisis. And so one of the main achievements of the summit a couple of weeks ago was this partnership on raw materials. It was very interesting from the Brussels point of view to see how this measure has been presented by the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. She was really insisting on the fact that Canada could be an alternative to China in the supply of raw materials. So I wanted to ask you whether you like this way of representing this new alliance that has been launched. So are you willing to be an alternative to China for the European Union? And maybe if you could tell more about this initiative. So what are the next steps? We have seen this first statement. So will there be a meeting or a roadmap for the coming months?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the collaboration between Canada and the European Union on critical minerals is really important. And the reason for that is that the inputs of these materials are really important to both of our respective countries achieving what is really important, which is the path to net zero. It's making sure that in this partnership, we have resiliency and the security of critical materials in these supply chains that really is needed for our net zero future. When we look at batteries, as I said earlier, the raw materials that are needed in a battery that will go into an electric vehicle, Canada supplies, some 14 out of 19 of those minerals. The same would go with solar panels. This partnership also enables the two countries to deepen its research and innovation collaboration, which is also necessary on the path to a green growth and to tackling climate change, but also very much a part of the green recovery. Canada has also partnered with the EU on the Horizon partnership. So this is really about intensifying research, innovation, and development, ensuring that we have a partnership agreement on critical minerals, which is really to secure our supply chain and ensure that resiliency. And it is how we collaborate and we innovate and we begin to trade and build in these very areas, which are going to, at the end of the day, I go back to, it's about people and it's about our businesses. Some of our incredible innovators are these small and medium-sized businesses that are come and born out of incredible research that has been done in all of our jurisdictions. So this really gives us that pathway for collaboration. And we're going to keep building on this because it really is important to a sustainable and a resilient and an inclusive future beyond COVID-19.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's more than China. I mean, it's of course a broader issue, and you explained it. And I was wondering again if we can come back to China because it is a very important. It's very hard to reflect about the geopolitics of trade without taking China into account. And as you know, the European Union has concluded an agreement on investments with China, but now the ratification process of this agreement is frozen. And Canada in the past as well has been negotiating with China a trade deal, but then last year you dropped negotiations. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see the EU-China negotiations? Do you think that could be what could be the potential impact, for example, on Canadian companies? And do you have any advice maybe to give to the European Commission or to European countries about trade negotiations with China?
Well, thank you for that, Giorgio. Maybe the best way for me to respond to it is maybe speak from sort of Canada's vantage point. You know, China, of course, is a nation of immense size and economic influence. And indeed, Canada has had a longstanding history with China with very deep people-to-people ties. Our priority bilaterally, of course, with China right now must be the release of Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spavor, who have been arbitrarily detained in China. But my colleague, the Foreign Affairs Minister, have talked about Canada's approach towards China. In areas where Canada can cooperate with China, we will. And one of those areas would be in climate change. And we're doing that as a globe, and we must do that as a globe. So in an area where we can collaborate and cooperate, we will. We will also have disagreements in other areas, such as human rights. And here, Canada believes that it's essential that democratic countries work together to promote the values of democracy and human rights. And here we will join other nations to challenge China. We also are in a position to coexist and to compete. Canada produces some of the finest products and services in the world. We stand out for quality, and we very much are a proponent of the rules-based international trading system. And so we will, we will compete in those areas where we, where we're in, like I said, we have some of the finest products and services, many of which are in demand around the world, including in China. But we will continue to work in the rules-based frameworks that exist. And our trading relationship is going to need to benefit the Canadian people. And we also must stay true to our value as Canadians. So that is our approach, which is to say that Canada's trading priorities and, will always reflect what is important to the Canadian people and the values of Canadians.
Thank you very much. So if I also get it right, like this red line about values, it's something that now, today prevent you from deepening trade ties with China, or at least to continue the negotiations of the trade deal. Is that right?
Well, I think I've outlined sort of Canada's approach, but what I would also say is that for me, as the Minister of both Small Business and International Trade, it's really important that here, coming out of COVID, onto that road to economic recovery, that we stay very focused to assist our businesses, support them to finish this fight against COVID-19. It's very encouraging here in Canada because we are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel with a very robust vaccination that is taking place here in Canada. And that is enabling our economy to open up. It is enabling people and our businesses to, get on that road to recovery. Of course, health and safety of Canadians always remains the top priority, but we stay very, very focused on helping our businesses get on this road to recovery and to ensure that our trading relationships with our valued partners, that we continue to deepen those relationships and create these opportunities as we have done through the Canada-EU Summit in a way that helps Canadian businesses diversify. When I look at Canada-EU, there are 500 million customers in this market. And of course, for European Union, exporting to Canada and working with Canadians also gives you access to all of the other partners, the trading partners that we work with. I always tout that Canada is the only G7 country that has a trade agreement with all of the other G7 partners, in addition to our very robust trading agreements like that, for example, here in North America through the new NAFTA with the United States and Mexico. So we're pretty focused on this road to recovery, ensuring that our businesses and our people, the Canadian people, are supported. We're very focused on the fight against climate change, very focused on ensuring that our relationships, working within the rules-based international trading system is something that we work to promote, to defend, and to strengthen. So these are the areas that Canada is working on and will continue to work on.
Thank you. So you mentioned the rule-based system, and immediately I think about the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And even with the new Biden administration, everyone was expecting things to change. So finally to have the appellate body unlocked. But as time being, it has not happened yet. And of course, Canada is presiding the Ottawa Group, which is very much focusing on these WTO issues. How do you think it would be possible to finally convince the United States to participate to the reform process of the WTO?
Well, I'm very encouraged. For one thing, we have a new leadership in Dr. Ngozi at the WTO that is bringing the energy to the organization in the areas where the work needs to take place. The WTO is a consensus-building organization, and Canada, leading the efforts of the Ottawa Group, is, I hope, making progress along with other allies. The Trade and Health Initiative is but one example where you see our ability to be able to work and collaborate together. This is something we worked with the European Union on. But in that spirit of collaboration, something else that Canada and the European Union also spearheaded was the multi-party interim agreement. This is it's known as the MPIA, but that is the interim solution to the appellate body impasse. So another area where Canada and the European Union managed to come up with this and then build consensus around that so that there is an interim mechanism. But there's no question that we are going to need to work together with the United States as well in the areas of reform for the WTO, so that indeed the world trading system and the rules-based trading system is there to support international trade. So Canada is very committed to doing this work with our partners, with the European Union, and in the global economy. And this work really does continue. But we are very encouraged.
And maybe another topical issue about the United States and negotiations with a lot of other countries is the issue of taxation. So there are big discussions around global corporate taxation, and that could be already a first kind of decision by the end of this month at the OECD and then at the G20 in Venice. And Canada was among the G7 countries that has agreed on the need to make this reform. And you also flagged to the United States, I think 1 month ago, that Canada is ready to move forward with a digital tax, and that digital tax could be removed if there is then an international agreement on this. Could you please tell us more? So is Canada going to implement a digital levy regardless of the outcome of ongoing negotiations on that?
Well, thank you for that. Canada made a commitment here to the people of Canada that, that there would be fairness in taxation, by all corporations, including the big technology companies. But we are also really clear that our preference, of course, is to work in the multilateral system with the OECD and countries, and that work will continue. But in the meantime, we have put this forward in our most recent budget. So the commitment that Canada has made to the Canadian people, we will follow through on our commitment, but at the same time, absolutely working in the multilateral system. We believe that is actually the better solution. So I know my colleague in the finance minister is very much doing that work at the multilateral level.
Thank you. So is it possible maybe to summarize by saying that until there will be a new international regulatory framework on this, Canada will keep in place its own digital levy? So until there is an international solution which is in force. Is that right?
Well, we're very hopeful that we will be able to get to that there will be a multilateral international solution. But in the meantime, Canada has, will keep its commitment to the Canadian people.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And maybe another question I wanted to ask you is about more a bilateral issue between Canada and France. Earlier this year, there has been a very interesting case of investment screening. We could call it like that, even if it wasn't exactly that. So the French economy ministry, or I mean, more particularly the minister Bruno Le Maire, opposed the takeover of a French supermarket chain, Carrefour, by a Canadian company, Couche-Tard. I was wondering whether you had a reaction on that. Do you think that this kind of behavior, this kind of protectionist behavior, could be seen as a risk to the cooperation and to the trade between the EU and Canada?
Well, I think that this is where, back to CETA for a moment in terms of why our agreements are so important. As these bilateral issues occur, certainly I am very committed to supporting the Canadian businesses, but also working in partnership and collaboration with our trading partner. So I think that as issues like this and others arise, I think what is most important is our ability to be able to work and to do what businesses do business, but countries are able to facilitate the bilateral any bilateral assistance or resolution. So I think that's why the trading agreements are indeed so important. We have mechanisms that actually help us facilitate and do this. I just had my meeting with the European, my counterpart in the EU Trade Commissioner in Executive Vice President Dombrovskis, and here is a mechanism that is a regular one where we look at how well the agreement is going. And it's encouraging. Like I said, the numbers are very encouraging in virtually all of the sectors. We are seeing increases on both sides. And as issues arise, I think it's important that we have mechanisms to resolve and to work at them together. And that's what I think is that's what underscores sort of the rules-based system and our ability to be able to trade and to work together. And that's why you have mechanisms like dispute settlements, et cetera, in these agreements, because it gives you the rules of engagement, and I think that is very positive.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just before wrapping up, we have a quick question from our audience about how we can include more sustainable and inclusive practices in trade between EU and Canada. I mean, you already mentioned that on how to make CETA more effective in that regard. But could you maybe mention as one key element, one key negotiation that is still ongoing, which could make trade between the EU and Canada more sustainable and more inclusive?
Well, I'm going to use the example of the virtual trade mission to France, where the theme of the entire mission was all about green recovery and finding those solutions, whether they are Canadian companies or French investments into green growth. So I will actually point out a couple of companies. Hydrogen, for example. There's a great Canadian there's a great Canadian company that is providing fuel cell engines to power tram buses in the city of Pau in southwestern France. So the first hydrogen-powered buses in France. Air Liquide, that is a great French company, is providing low carbon hydrogen here in North America by investing in growing their presence here in Canada to access the North American market. I think about e-mobility companies, a Canadian company that is providing electrification or connectivity to heavy duty vehicles, partnering with a great French waste collection company, companies that are in the circular economy, so many that are small and medium-sized, businesses. So I illustrate these as an example of the work that we are doing in both in the EU but also in Canada that really is facilitating, like I said, that research and innovative collaboration, the people-to-people but business-to-business ties, helping develop more capability and support so that our smallest of entrepreneurs that could be the most innovative of our small companies are really able to get into some of those value chains or supply chains of the larger companies on both sides of the Atlantic. And because these are solutions and inputs that really become solutions that will not only help economic growth and create jobs, but they also contribute to our overall fight against climate change. So it's more than policy. It is policy, but it is also making sure that we are supporting our businesses and our entrepreneurs and our people.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have touched upon many, many topics. We started from CETA, then we had a look at possible cooperation in raw material supply chain, and then we also had a look at China. So thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. And this concludes the first day of our Politico Competitive Europe Summit. Of course, we invite you to join us tomorrow as well. There will be a lot of interesting session about trade, competition and industrial policy, and especially recovery. And we will kick off with Spain Vice Prime Minister Nadia Calviño. So please join us, and thanks again, Minister.